We are talking with State Senator John Curran. Senator, wanted to take a few minutes and talk with you about a pretty hot issue in your district that involves a local company, Sterigenics International, and some possible air contamination with a very hazardous chemical. Can you bring us up to date on latest situation?
Absolutely. So it's a serious public health risk. A facility known as Sterigenics, located in Willowbrook, right in the middle of the town, next to the Village Hall, has been operating under a prior name since prior company since 1984. However, what they do is they sterilize medical surgical equipment using a gas known as ethylene oxide. And ethylene oxide, for a long time, was suspected of having some potentially being a carcinogen. What we now know is in 2016, ethylene oxide was in fact recategorized by the U.S. EPA to a known carcinogen, and their studies that concluded, and this occurred in December of 2016, show that ethylene oxide is actually 30 times more potent, 30 times more likely to cause cancer, and it's related to, there are links to several forms of cancer, including breast cancer and lymphoma and leukemia, than previously thought. So the U.S. EPA did some air monitoring in 2018 and actually put together a report and notified the company that the levels emitting from Sterigenics were a health concern to the community. This all happened unbeknownst to the village of Willowbrook and area residents, and about 3 weeks ago, that report became public and was brought to the village's attention. At that time, the village has reached out to all local leaders, including myself, and we are gathering facts, gathering information, and we are simply asking at this point, we want Sterigenics to cease operations until we have follow-up study being conducted, until that is done and analyzed, and we get all the relevant information together into residents so we know what type of health risk we're dealing with here, and if it is something that causes an increased risk in cancer, that's unacceptable in our community, in our residential area, and we need to take action on that.
Well, now, you and a number of local leaders have written a letter to the company asking them to cease operations until more about this particular chemical is known, or at least the extent of what its impact may be on the local environment. And you've also reached out to the Illinois Attorney General to intervene and revoke the company's air permit, EPA air permit. So what has been the response so far with both of those efforts?
Well, the Mayor of Willowbrook, Mayor Trilla, DuPage County Board Chairman Dan Cronin, State House Republican Leader Jim Durkin, and myself, and other community leaders all sent a letter to Sterigenics, as you stated, asking them as a community partner, a member of the community, with this, public health, great public health concern going on in the community, to, make the choice to cease operations temporarily while testing is conducted and follow-up study is done by the U.S. EPA. They have declined to do so. So as you stated, I've also reached out to the Illinois Attorney General. I've had some good conversations there. Certainly they have a very knowledgeable staff in the area of environmental law and environmental enforcement, and I've requested that they pursue action to reopen that air permit issued in 2015, which was issued prior to the classification of ethylene oxide as a known carcinogen, and let's have a new public hearing on that. And I believe a new public hearing with all the facts on the table, which we don't have all the facts yet, that would lead to ceasing operations there. Should the Attorney General not pursue that, I've also filed legislation to do the same. There's a real opportunity here for the Attorney General to act quicker and in a more expeditious manner. The legislative process is slower, but, as a last effort, if the Attorney General does not step in this situation, then the legislature needs to step in. And so I filed SB 3630, and very happy my colleague Chris Neidel has signed on as a chief co-sponsor, and he represents areas north of Willowbrook that are also have great levels of concern with this contamination, and we're going to push this matter. I hope that my Senate colleagues will rally to the side of public safety here and public health and move this matter forward.
How would this legislation, what would its impact be on this particular issue?
The legislation has several components. The most important component for the citizens of Willowbrook and the surrounding area, people in the 41st Senate District, is the legislation would reopen the current operating air permit based on the fact, and the case I state is we now have more facts, more science on this matter than was known in 2015, May of 2015, when that air permit was issued. Though the new science, the new facts on this matter need to be a part of that process, need to be incorporated in it. So the legislation would reopen the current permit. There would be a new public hearing where the new science on ethylene oxide could be introduced. Residents who are much more aware of the situation at this point and have great concerns have an opportunity to express those concerns, and the EPA needs to take that into consideration in whether or not this air permit should continue to exist. Also that air permit expires in 2020, so we have also added additional protections for the public in that permitting process for should this permit not be revoked when it comes up again in 2020. Furthermore, there was, going back in the past, there was a release of ethylene oxide of a large amount with a mechanical failure at the facility in 2013. They did notify the Illinois EPA. However, no neighboring property owner was notified of this release of this toxin into the air. Current law, surprisingly, does not require that. We need to strengthen protections for residents in the area, and so this legislation would also require notification to surrounding property owners when there is a release of a toxic substance into the air. We have that for water. We have that for soil. We don't have it for air in the state of Illinois. So we need to update our statutes in that regard to make sure that people are notified quickly in a manner like that, and they have the opportunity to remove themselves from the area.
Is going to be a story that's still going to be in development, it seems, over the next quite a few number of months, and we will just check back with you from time to time and get an update from you, and so to keep people informed.
I appreciate that opportunity.